Hello, everyone. Today I want to share a interesting story about a travel experience that I had back in 1992. And I want to share this story because I'd like to preserve the story for my kids and my grandkids to listen to in the future. So in 1992, I was a single dad and living in Houston, and I was going on a business trip to Montreal. And at that time, Anna and Colin were young teenagers. I think Courtney was 10 and Tyler was 8. And so when I traveled like that, I would have a babysitter come and stay when I was going to be away for a few nights or a couple nights. So I left on this trip and went up to Montreal, Canada. And while I was away, I'd call home every night and talk to the kids, and I was excited, and the kids were all excited because at the end of that week and on the upcoming Saturday, it was there was a big event at our country club. It was the annual Breakfast with Santa celebration and buffet, and so the kids were all looking forward to it. I was looking forward to it, and so we talk about that when I call them in the evening. And so on Friday, I finished up all the business meetings that I had there in Montreal, and I went to the airport in Montreal to catch my flight back to Houston. So from Montreal, I had a ticket to go. I think it was on Air Canada, but it was a ticket to go from Montreal to Pittsburgh, and then I had a connecting flight with Continental from Pittsburgh to Houston. So, uh, got my boarding pass, boarded the flight in Montreal. At the time of takeoff, they said that they had announced that there's a big snowstorm in the Northeast, and so we're hoping that we can make it on time. That this is widespread throughout the Northeast, so we'll see how it goes. So we took off, and I didn't realize, but the flight made a brief stop in Buffalo. And when we left Montreal, it was snowing, but for December in Montreal, that wasn't unusual. So the flight stopped in Buffalo, and I mean, it was snowing like crazy in Buffalo, but it's Buffalo, so they were prepared for it. The only problem was uh, we we boarded a few more passengers, but we had to get in line before we could take off with a bunch of other planes to get de-iced. And so we were waiting in line, and eventually the flight took off. But looking at my watch, I was like, "Wait, this is going to be a real close call for me to catch my flight from Pittsburgh to Houston." So the flight arrived in Pittsburgh, and as we landed in a snowstorm in Pittsburgh. Uh, we got to the gate. We were pulling into the gate. As we were pulling into the gate, I'd noticed that there was a Continental flight pulling out toward the runway, and I'm sitting there telling myself, "That's probably my flight. That's probably my flight taking off because this is about the time it should take off." But I thought, well, maybe there's a chance because maybe their flights to here are delayed as well. Well, I got inside and I went to the Continental desk, and in fact, no, that was my flight. So I said, okay, well, what can we do? And uh, talking about getting on another flight. Just keep in mind, this was 1992, and for those of you who've flown most of your life uh, after 9/11 and after the internet and cell phones and everything, this is a completely different time. I mean, back in those days, there was, I mean, all the tickets were paper tickets. Boarding passes were paper boarding passes. I mean, no, I mean, security was nothing. I mean, there literally was very little security at all. So I went up to the Continental desk there in Pittsburgh, and I asked them about getting to Houston. They said, we can put you on a flight that's leaving right now to go from Pittsburgh to Dallas, and then you can get your connection to Houston from there. I was like, okay, cool, that works out. So they gave me a boarding pass and went and got on the plane. So when I got on the plane, it was really a big plane, a lot of people that had uh, center section and two side sections. Uh, and the plane was a little bit, the configuration was a little unusual back in those days. They had the cabin divided off into three sections. I was obviously, because I got on at the last minute, in a bad seat in the back section. So I got back there and I got in my seat, and it was interesting because the flight attendants in the back section weren't sitting in the back of the plane like they do today. The flight attendants were sitting in jump seats facing the people in the back sections. We were looking toward the front of the plane, they were looking back at us. Anyway, I'll come to this part of the story. So the flight taxis out, flight takes off, we get up in the air. I'm not sure how far we were away from the airport, but not very far. But we had reached a pretty high altitude pretty quickly, and just out of the middle of nowhere, there was an explosion. I mean, just boom, and the plane just starts rattling and shaking, and the plane turns over on its tilted over, way over, with facing my left side facing down and the other side up. And I mean, the plane's shaking and rattling, and I'm sitting there, and I mean, everybody's starting to freak out. And I'm looking at the flight attendant in front of me. She's like 2 or 3 rows in front of me. And I mean, she's freaking out. So it's like, this must be bad. So, just, riding with it there. But the phone rang, and the flight attendant got on the phone, and I'm thinking, I'm sure the cockpit's calling back to them. The flight attendant started crying. She just started crying, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, okay, we're done. This is it. This is over. And I was like, this is just crazy. The plane is shaking, and this whole process probably took less than 5 minutes from the time of the explosion to the time that we finally got back down, because obviously I'm here. So but it seemed like an hour. I mean, seemed like it was in slow motion, and I mean, people were screaming, and fortunately nobody got up and tried to do anything crazy. But people were just losing their minds. You can imagine. And so, over a little bit of time, the pilot seemed to get control of it. He made a turn back. I could tell, because back in those days I'd flown a lot internationally and domestically as well. Well, he turned the plane, but it was still it's still on its side basically. And he turned the plane, and I knew we were headed back to the airport. And I mean, gradually he was able to pull the plane up to level, and we're coming in for a landing in the middle of a blizzard, okay? And I mean, I don't know how high up we were when he dropped down to hit the runway, but I mean, I assume there was no way for him to do like how they reverse engines when they land. I don't think there was any way for him to do that, obviously, because one engine was gone. And so, I mean, we hit that runway. It felt like the plane fell out of the sky from 300 feet up. I mean, we hit that runway, and he kept it steady, and he rode it out, and unbelievably, we were able to taxi back into the jetway and where we could get back off the plane. And as we were pulling in, he got on the phone on the intercom, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry about that. We on our takeoff, our left side, I don't know what, starboard or whatever, engine blew, And he said, so we had to control the plane and had to land the plane with the one engine on the other side. And fortunately, we were able to get it back and get us in and get us landed and back to the gate. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, man, if that guy hadn't have done that, if that pilot, if if it wasn't that pilot, I mean, I don't know what are the odds, but it was amazing. And I can tell you that what the thought that crossed my mind was, I was sitting there and I was thinking, I've done a lot of really stupid things in my life, where probably some of them I'm really just lucky I didn't get killed, and by just doing stupid stuff on my own. But that's the first and I think probably the only time in my life where I was literally sitting there helpless with dozens of people helpless, believing like 99% that I was going to die. And you know I'm I'm praising praising God, and at the same time I'm like almost in a state of shock. Anyway, able to get off the plane, went to the desk, uh, Continental desk, and but I went to the Continental desk to see if I could catch a flight. Trust me, 99.9% of those people who were on that plane, they were not getting back on another plane that day. There was no way. I mean, I mean, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't even have thought about getting back on a plane. But got to get back home. So went to the Continental desk and asked them, what I could do to get a flight, and they said the airport's closing down, and we have one flight boarding over here, and uh, I can if you give me your boarding pass on the flight that just about crashed, uh, I can give you a boarding pass to get on the flight that's going to Chicago. That simple. She said, I'll take care of the paperwork. It's okay. So got the boarding pass, got on the flight, went to Chicago. I can tell you, taking off in a snowstorm, I can tell you when that plane was taking off, I was sitting there and everything inside of me was like holding on for dear life. No problems. Everything went smooth. Got to Chicago, no snowstorm there. Everything was okay. Went to the Continental desk there, said, do you have a flight from, it's O'Hare, you have a flight from O'Hare to Houston? They said, no, but we've got a flight to Dallas. And I go, oh no, not Dallas again. I said, okay, well, that gets me closer to home. So can I get on that flight? Same thing. Give me your boarding pass for your flight from Pittsburgh. I'll give you a boarding pass for this flight that's going to Dallas. Never happened these days. Go board the plane, get on the flight to Dallas, easy flight to Dallas, flight lands in Dallas. By then it's pretty much in the middle of the night by the time I got to Dallas. And I thought, well, I think that there should be a Continental flight from Dallas to Houston like at 5 or 6 in the morning. It's on a Saturday morning. I should be able to get on and no problem. So I'll just stay here in the terminal and maybe try to catch a couple hours sleep, and then hop on a plane and get to Houston. So I was walking down the corridor there and in the terminal, and I looked over to my left, and there's a flight being boarded there. There was only a couple people. They didn't even have the sign up anymore about where it was flying to. And don't ask me why. I just walked over there and I said, where is this flight going to? And the gate agent said, oh, it's going to Houston. I said, you're going to Houston? She said, yeah, it's been delayed, and it's been delayed a long time this evening. The flight's going to Houston. And I was like, that's crazy. I got to get to Houston. And so she's like, well, what's the story? And I mean, I told her basically my 20-minute story in about 2 minutes. And she looked at me. She's like, that's crazy. She said, here, give me your boarding pass from Chicago to Dallas, and I'll give you this boarding pass to Houston. She gave me the boarding pass to Houston. I got on the plane, quick flight down to IAH, landed there, got in my automobile, and drove home. Got got there in time to get a couple hours sleep. Got up. We went to breakfast with Santa. Had a great time. Friends, great food. Kids had fun. Everything went great. What a crazy story. Uh, I mean, number one, crazy because I was at that point. I was just still happy to be alive, and besides that, you know, all the steps that it took me to get home that day just could never happen today. But that's kind of the way things happen to me sometimes. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the story, and kids, uh, ask your mom and or dad, or aunt and uncle, from the tenant side of the family, uh, if, to see if they remember about the story of the breakfast with Santa Claus that year. Love you guys. Thanks. Bye.